Recording in progress. Recording in progress. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're recording right away, huh?
I didn't want to forget. So, are we really going to do another episode? Is that what we're doing right now?
Yeah. Number two, we're just on the fly.
On the fly. It's who does number 2 work for? This is the Varsity podcast,
Moly.
part duh, Electric Boogaloo. Are you in? I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's roll.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the Varsity podcast. I'm Tim.
And I'm Jamie.
Jamie, why don't you tell them why this is the Varsity podcast? Give them a little rundown again as to why we've named it this.
Once again, back to our hometown, little throwback to the old ice cream place that everybody would hang out at, mainly after baseball, softball games. And just thought it was a nice tribute to it. So,
And a good place to connect.
Yeah. It was so much fun those days, back when you could actually ride in the back of a pickup truck after a baseball game and yell, "We're number one," with, when it was legal.
Yeah, that's for
sure. Would just pile in. Not that we were going 50 miles, we literally were going down the street. So.
And it was pretty much down the road from about 2 or 3 different baseball fields too, so it wasn't that far. So
yeah, we all survived. Nobody fell out of the truck.
It was also a place, though, we would meet up riding our bikes. We'd meet down there oftentimes for a little summer treat. So, but that's why we named it the Varsity podcast. It's a place where we hope to connect with you, our listeners, to talk about some nostalgia, some things of old, to hear your stories, to hear our stories, and just to kind of reminisce. And so we thought on this second episode, we would talk a little bit about music, and particularly some of the music that shaped us as we were growing up. Now, Jamie and I were both born in the 70s, but grew up in the 80s. So the 80s subculture was definitely a huge part of our childhood. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, it was, I mean, you see technology today, like exactly what we're doing right now and how many kids are doing this now. I mean, look, what your son's been doing this a little bit.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if we had this when we were growing up? I mean,
yeah, but
we would have so much fun with this.
But we had the TV cart that with the square TV that probably weighed a ton, that was strapped to the TV cart that they would push down the hall from the library in, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And we would get to watch VHS, probably Betamax copy videos of certain stuff in school, if you remember those days. Oh, speaking of Betamax, if anybody grew up in the 80s, you know that you had a choice to make. You either had to go VHS or Betamax, and they were sort of this competition. And you all know probably the VHS won. Betamax did not last. It was an alternative form of like videotape that you could watch movies on. So my family invested in the Betamax. I think your family had the
except
VHS.
in your house,
right? And the notorious things that I had recorded on my Betamax was, number one was Rap Mania. Speaking of music, which was this a live stream before live stream. So it was on pay-per-view satellite. You're right. A rap concert. And then the other one was Geraldo, the Geraldo Rivera show, which was on after school. And it was the episode where he was interviewing Nazis or something, neo-Nazis. And then there was a big fight and he broke his nose because somebody threw a chair.
Yeah. In fact, I remember being there, obviously, for Rap Mania. We had all the people from the youth group there at your church.
That's right. Yeah.
And when we were watching it, I can remember your parents coming home. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Was it your mom or your dad that came downstairs?
It was both of them. She walked down the stairs right.
Well, it was on mute though, right? They came home. I think you mute it, and then
as soon as I unmuted it,
something happened.
Somebody dropped an F-bomb on the Rap Mania.
You unmute it, and as soon as you did hit the unmute, here comes the up. Yeah.
So. And I was worried my mom was going to shut it down right there on the spot, but we all kind of looked at each other nervously, but it was fine.
So I remember that, but then the other part I definitely remember was Biz Markie's pants falling down the entire time.
Right.
That was before the SAG became popular.
Right. So music definitely shaped our lives growing up. That was we were probably sophomores in high school at Rap Mania era. It was like probably 1990, I think. Might have been earlier than that, but
We'll have to look it up.
might have to Google it. But think back to some of the shows and videos that we would watch, even on MTV. I mean, so MTV, I think, premiered in, I think, 1981. And definitely, I don't know if you remember this, but I mean, it was always kind of on at different times of the day, or you definitely, there were certain videos that you had to see and you always remember seeing. And then since we were both into like rap music, they had Yo MTV Raps. Do you remember watching that?
What, 4:30 every day after school, right?
After school, right, for sure. Um,
Dr.
oh,
Dre, the original Dr. Dre, and
right.
Ed Lover and
Ed
Fab
Lover.
Five Freddy.
Oh, here's a local reference if you grew up in Northeast Ohio, though. I don't know if you remember this, but they also showed music videos on like a TV station out of Akron, TV 23. Do you remember?
I remember that.
Do you remember that the VJ, his name was Billy Soul?
Mhm.
Billy Soul would play music videos. I don't even know when it
Was he
was.
only local?
I think, well, I don't know.
I can't
I think he was
remember.
just on W, what was it? WAKC or W, I don't know. It was an Akron TV.
Was it 23? You like
2023 Music Magazine was his video show. So if
you
you didn't have cable, that's where you had to resort to watching
Because you
videos.
remember we had, locally TV 67 with
Oh,
the legendary Scott Davis.
right.
But wasn't there was something like 61
There
as
was a
well.
61. Yeah, see, our kids these days, they don't understand what that was called, UHF TV. And also, side note, a great movie starring Weird Al Yankovic called UHF. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
if you grew up in the 80s, you knew UHF TV. It was the weird channels that weren't NBC, CBS, or ABC, where you could watch like the Son of Ghoul and Channel 43. Actually, the Cleveland Indians back in the day played on Channel 43, didn't they?
Yep. The super host
Superhost, the guy that dressed up like Superman and painted his nose
play
red.
those monster movies on
Right,
Saturday and spin the wheel, win a
right,
prize. And then you
right.
had to guess like the video clip, I think.
That's right. Oh, then they'd play like uh who were those on Fox 8? Who were the guys that, oh geez, I want to edit this out.
Big Chuck and Little John.
Big
I know
Chuck
where
and
you're
Little
going.
John. They did the skits and stuff like that.
That's still been I think they still run that at like 11:30 on Sundays, old reruns.
If you guys don't know what we're talking about, just Google Big Chuck and Little John. Do you want to hear my impression of the laugh they would play at the end of all the skits?
You got that locked and loaded?
I don't know if I can do this. It's
Yeah.
been a long time. It was a, you remember that? They would play that high pitch. Okay. Let's just
That
move
was
on.
so high I couldn't hear it.
Yeah. The dogs are barking upstairs. So all right, well, let's talk about music. Talk about how about you? How about this? What was the first piece of music that you paid for with your own money? Do you remember?
Believe it was my own money.
Or maybe mom
Um,
bought it for you.
yeah. So it would be, and then you're gonna have to help me, Mr. Vinyl, because you got all your vinyl in the back.
Right.
The 33 was the small record, and the 45 was the opposite, right? Okay,
Opposite.
so
45 is the
5 is a
single,
small.
and
All
33
right.
and a third is the long play
So the
LP.
45 rolled up to the 62 on Kmart, or the Kmart, where is it on 62?
Route 62 in Canton.
Yep. Remember going back to the record
Yeah,
section.
the back corner.
Yeah. Yep. And I can picture the actual, like, what was it? However the display was set, and they had all the albums. You could just kind of pull them forward.
Yeah.
The first one I bought, and I'm trying to remember the song, but it was Lover Boy. Lover
Lover
Boy.
Boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember the song. I can't remember. I have to look it up, but I
You
remember it
can
being
Google that.
yeah, it was a Lover Boy album. And then the second piece, same location, because hey, why not go back and get another one?
For
Because the
sure.
other Lover Boy was just doing great on our turntable. The second piece, and this ties into MTV, was the Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson.
Say. Or
Yes,
was it The Girl
it
Is
was.
Mine?
No, say. Yeah,
Say what you want. Yeah.
I remember
Very
that being the
cool.
second piece.
That's a
They were
that's
both 45s.
that's like 1982. I didn't buy my first 45 until 85, and it was Till Tuesday Voices Carry. But the first cassette I ever bought, I think, was The Police Synchronicity and around that same time was Michael Jackson Thriller, and I think my mom got me Lionel Richie, Can't Slow Down for my birthday. So, hey, we can't help it.
Got to
The
start
music that someone
somewhere.
that's right, yeah. So, but there was something about like spending your own money once we got older. I remember spending like some of my lawn mowing money. Like I would start buying my own cassettes, as I got older. Matter of fact, Tears for Fears songs from the Big Chair was an album on cassette that I would listen to with my Walkman as I was mowing the grass. That was like I just listened to that on repeat. I seemed to do that. So did you would you mowed the grass a lot? You and I both grew up making a lot of cash mowing the neighbors' yards, our yards, that kind of thing. Were you listening to a Walkman when you were mowing the grass? Listening to music? Do you remember?
Later on.
Yeah.
Later on, yeah. When I finally got a Walkman, but I can remember my first cassette as well.
Oh, what was
So
that?
all you had to do is go right across the street from Kmart over to Gold Circle.
That's right. Yeah.
And the first cassette I ever bought was the Cars Heartbeat City. Once
Great,
again, tie it back into MTV,
great album.
watching
Great
videos,
videos.
and it's it's basically selling the music.
Right. Ah, we froze. Son of a biscuit. I'm gonna have to edit this part out. Dang it. Are you back?
Yeah, I saw you had a small freeze moment. I thought you were, you know what you look like? You look like the Kermit
I can edit that
meme.
out.
You look like the Kermit meme with
Oh,
drinking coffee
sipping.
or tea.
All right. So Heartbeat City, that was the first cassette you bought
First
at Gold
cassette.
Circle. Here's
Yeah.
a little bit of trivia for you guys. The very first MTV Video Music Awards was in September of 1984. The host was Dan Aykroyd and Bette Midler. Infamous Madonna live rendition of Like a Virgin where she fell off the cake and she was marching down it, and long story short, she gained a lot of fans that day. But do you know what won the best video? The very first VMAs, Video Music Awards, the best video of the year, whatever they call it. It wasn't Michael Jackson, it wasn't Madonna, it wasn't Duran Duran, it was the Cars, You Might Think. So there's your trivia.
Maybe I made a great selection on my
so
cassette
yeah,
then.
great cassette. I also remember going to Gold Circle. That's where I bought the Miami Vice soundtrack on cassette. I was really proud of that purchase.
Nice.
So that was a good 1985 probably. So yeah, definitely music was a part of our upbringing. Let me tell you a little quick story about my Walkman that I mean, I don't know about you, but like I carried that thing everywhere I went, it seemed like. I was on a trip with the youth group and so all the guys are like cramped in one room and we're sleeping, and it was early in the morning, we're just waking up and getting ready to go to breakfast. And yeah, you know what would happen if the cassette gets stuck, the tape gets unwound inside your Walkman or your cassette player, and then you're worried that it's going to like rip the tape and you got to get your pencil to like wind it back up. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
When
I remember.
So a cassette got jammed in my Walkman, and the guy sleeping in the bunk next to me, he's like, "Oh, I'll help you," and he literally just like ripped the whole he ripped my
Some
Walkman.
help.
He just totally like ripped the front off and broke my Walkman, and then he rolled back and went back to sleep, and I was like, all right, thanks, dude. But that was like devastating because actually I was still able to play cassette tapes. It just didn't have a cover on it anymore. It still would play them, but he ripped the cover off of the cassette player. Cool story, Tim. All right, let's talk more about music. Think about how much music shaped you growing up. What was your first concert? Was there music playing in your house? What was it like? Were you a musical family?
Music in the house. I mean, shit, you can start to go back to 8 tracks.
Oh, for
My
sure.
mom used to play 8 tracks, and but she had a lot of vinyl. She used to play Alabama. She used to play the still love the Doobie Brothers. Still one of my favorites of all time.
Right.
Um, so really enjoyed that. My dad had, and I'm pretty sure it was his. He had the Woodstock album. I think it was a
Oh
double
yeah.
album.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen the cover. I think the guy and the girl kind of stand there on the front. And I think she's got
Totally.
like a
A
blanket
blanket.
around
Yep.
her or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had that, but I just don't remember really playing it a lot. Now I would jump all over that.
It's probably would it be worth money. Do you remember that you could go to the library, the public library, and check out
Yeah.
records? I remember
Mhm.
that. Now you were an athlete. You played what, basketball and football. We'll have to save a story of the story when you broke your arm playing football, for another podcast. But think about like your bus trips. Would you be listening to music, or would they be pumping music in the locker rooms to get you guys pumped up? What was that like?
There was definitely music in the locker room. I mean, the major songs that we would play. I would say if you want to go before game day and just think about the old weight room when you were working out there, uh, I would say our number one go to cassette was AC/DC Back in Black.
Right,
Played that all the time. But as
right.
far as every game, did you hear that?
It's your
Siri's
phone.
like,
It heard you. Yeah.
Siri's starting to play Back in Black right
Well,
now.
don't play it because we'll have to
Okay,
pay
okay, okay.
fee.
It's
Well, yeah,
off.
what they'll
Yep, it's
like
off. Turn off.
licensing
Turn off.
fees or something. That is funny though.
Thank you, Siri, for at
Yeah.
least somebody listens to me.
What about middle school? Well, junior high or high school dances? Did you do that? Was that part of your? I
Oh
don't
no,
remember.
dressing up and dancing, that was not my thing.
So I remember at our local YMCA, they would have some YMCA dances. I have no idea why the YMCA hosted dances. I think it was probably for junior high and high school kids. My only memories of those junior high dances at the YMCA is one time I made a girl cry, which I feel guilty about. Apologies to
Yeah,
the thou who shall
and
remain nameless, or maybe she made me cry. Maybe I just misremembered,
that
um,
might have happened.
but they were, I don't know, they were like, okay, for those of you listening, can you think of the songs that were like the banned songs? You couldn't play them. The DJ wouldn't play them even if you requested them. They were songs that were banned that they weren't allowed to play at the dances. One of them was Moni Moni by Billy Idol, which I think is a cover. I never understood why that song was banned. They couldn't play it. Someone should Google it. There's probably a
I don't
reason for
know.
it.
I
And
have a more I go ahead, finish that, but I
no,
have a
no.
more current story for that.
Okay, go ahead.
So I wanted to purchase so back in the day when we used to actually sit and listen to the radio with a blank cassette in there, just waiting for your
Yeah.
favorite song to come on.
Yeah, yeah.
Bam, I dropped it. You'd hit the unpause and record
Yeah.
and so I'm recording the one version of Moni Moni and it was like a live version.
I remember that, the Billy Idol live
Yeah,
version,
it
which
was really
nobody likes the
cool.
live version. You
I
liked it?
do.
You did? Okay.
I love the live music. I mean,
Nice.
even to this day, I prefer listening to live music than some of the studio stuff. I mean, there's some stuff that's I mean,
So like
great, don't get
even
me
like
wrong.
some bootleg albums, or the live bootleg, like
Yeah,
Pearl Jam. You and I used to kind of collect
right.
some bootlegs.
So it was I'm pretty sure it was last year. Martha Quinn put something out on Twitter about, this date in history that the Billy Idol song
Yeah.
was number one in on the
Right.
charts at that time, the
Probably like
Billboard.
probably 1987 if I had to guess.
Yeah. So when she when she posted that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I've never heard that version that was on my cassette all those years ago.
Right.
So I sent her a message. It's like, hey, what about this live version? I remember. And she tweeted back. It was really cool. Tell them it's like, yeah, it was this concert or whatever.
Right.
So I ended up finding it on iTunes and
Nice.
purchased it, and I got it on my list.
That's
And it's
awesome.
great. Yeah, it was just cool to interact with Martha freaking Quinn
You've had some
from
success.
MTV.
You've had some success on Twitter. You're a good follow because you get some interaction with some A and B list celebrities or sports athletes, things of that nature.
Absolutely, it's fun.
So back to the junior high dances. Okay, so there was this song, those of you that are listening, 1986, I want to say. So in 86, what we were probably 7th grade. It was a one-hit wonder. The artist was
Sixth
named,
or seventh, yeah.
yeah, Jermaine Stewart. One-hit wonder. And he had a song called We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off. All right, to have a good time.
Oh no.
Uh-huh. So we're at these YMCA dances, and as soon as that song would be played, everybody would boo, of course. And he would sing the chorus, "We don't have to take our clothes off," and then everybody would yell at the top of their lungs. bull blank and just curse, which then after a while they would like shut the dances down. So that was like the greatest that was like rebellion, when you're 12 or 13, like that was just the most rebellious thing you could do. Um yeah, I can think about how are there any moments in your life? I can think of moments in my life, whether they be good or bad, that are connected to music. Um Can you think of any and it doesn't have to be your childhood even, but can you think of any specific memories that music is connected to that memory?
Well, I'll clean up the about football with music and the locker room, and
Mhm.
the two go-to songs were Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It. That was huge.
Right.
And like when they scream and like, yeah, at the end, that was us in the locker room. That was us getting the hell out of the locker room. And then,
Right.
Metallica Black Album, Enter Sandman, we played that. So those
Right.
were like the two key songs from uh,
So if you hear those songs, does it take you back to those
every
memories?
time,
Yeah.
every time, every time, you
Okay.
know.
Here's a memory from ninth grade. Okay, so our junior high was weird because at the time it was seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. It was our freshman year. My freshman English teacher was named Mr. Tucci, who happened to be the basketball coach. And I think one year they went 0 and like 20, didn't even win a game. He was a very charismatic teacher and coach, but I liked him.
Let's just say he used to get his steps in during the game
Yeah,
before getting your steps in was popular.
right. He would be all up and down the court sideline up. He would go up into the stands and
Into the
walk up and
stands. Yeah, that's what I'm
yeah,
talking about.
for
Yep.
sure. Um, it was freshman English. We're studying Romeo and Juliet, and Mr. Tucci loved Debbie Gibson. Debbie Gibson was like that teeny bop. A lot of girls liked her, but Mr. Tucci was a fan, and so we were like studying Romeo and Juliet, and for whatever reason, I mean, it was rare, but in the school every once in a while, so he just like had a radio or whatever. He was playing a Debbie Gibson cassette. It happened to be on a day when I had that class first period in the morning, and I went to school and I kind of had an upset stomach, and but I'm like, oh, it'll pass. And I'm sitting in in English class. We're talking about Romeo and Juliet. He's playing Debbie Gibson out of the blue, and you get that feeling in your gut where you're like, this isn't good, and it starts to work its way up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do I need to run out of this classroom? Am I going to get sick? And I went to his desk. I'm like, I gotta go. And he was like, before he could even release me to go to the bathroom, I like ran out the door because I'm like, I'm gonna throw up. And I'm running down the hallway. And if you remember in that old junior high, the girls and boys bathrooms were not exactly right next to each other. They were a little bit spaced apart, at least on the one
Yeah.
hallway. I'm running by and I'm right near the girls' restroom. And I'm like thinking to myself, I gotta make a choice here. Like, I could take a risk and run into the girls' restroom and just throw up in the toilet and hope that no other girls are in there. Or I could take my chances and try to make it all the way to the boys' restroom just down the hall. And I'm like, I'm taking my chances. And long story short, I didn't make it to the boys' bathroom, and I threw up in the doorway to one of the I think it was a science classroom, and a class full of students just watched me lose my breakfast all over the entryway to their door. And
I
it
was
was
not in either. I wasn't in the class that you delivered in. I wasn't in
no,
the class that you started in.
no.
And
It
I've
was
never heard this story before.
one of the worst because it's been a suppressed memory, and it was one of the worst memories of I mean, as a freshman, what's the worst thing that can happen to any kid in school is that you could throw up in school, and then the janitor has to come and put the like sawdust on it to kind of absorb it before he clean. Yeah, it was bad. And
I,
it's all Debbie Gibson's fault.
well, you get it out, man. I mean,
Yeah.
not don't throw up again, but I mean, I'm glad you got this,
Yeah.
this horrible memory out, and we can move on from it for you.
All right. We're gonna yeah, no kidding. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the music that was more in our high school years. I want to ask you about this. Did you watch a lot of Saturday Night Live growing up?
I would say more what late 80s going into early 90s. Yeah. I mean, as we probably hit freshman year into high school when we could actually if you could stay up that long.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or if you could tape it on your Betamax player, but record it. Yeah. Um, just remember in those days, like it was like a big deal if there was a certain musical act. Like even later on, like when we were out of high school, like maybe yeah, probably out of high school, like when Nirvana played
Yeah.
or some big artist, it was like a big deal. I remember some point when we were in high school, Aerosmith was on, and that was like a big deal. And Tom Hanks, and then they did Wayne's World with Aerosmith and Tom Hanks. That was pretty huge. Tom Hanks was their sound guy, and he would say, testing 1 2, sibilance." One of my favorite SNL memories. Um, it's funny because really our only outlet to watch, unless we were going to a concert, was to see either concert footage or a live performance on the Grammys or something on TV or MTV.
Right.
So, do you have any memories about TV performances that were magical or memorable? Music growing up?
I remember so you had remember there was a VHS of, and I think it was the making of Thriller.
Oh yeah,
So it was like, I don't know, 30 minutes long, something like that. And we were staying that weekend. This would have been summertime. We were staying at Cuddy's Resort, the campground
the campground.
right
Yeah,
there off 619 or on 619.
yeah.
And one of the things they had for that weekend was, hey, come to the clubhouse. We're going to play this video. And there was quite a few people in there on a
Wow.
Saturday night to watch this video. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was the making of Thriller. It definitely wasn't just um, the video itself,
I
but
think that was, yeah, that was like a big deal. I mean, heck, the Thriller video alone was like a mini movie, if I as I remember.
yeah. The other memory from Cuddy's Resort was there was a lifeguard, this blonde named Babette, that worked there.
Babette,
Babette,
never forget. Yes,
yeah.
Babette.
And guess what? What she turned out to be
I don't
was
know.
Bernie Kosar's wife.
Wait, seriously?
Yes, yes,
Okay, see, I wasn't intending for this conversation to go this way, but man, I don't know if this is connected to music or not, but sometimes music memories are connected to like, schoolboy crushes that we may or may not have had. Because I remember being on vacation up at Lakeside, which was up near Sandusky, Cedar Point, probably around 1986, because it was when David Lee Roth left Van Halen, and it was the new Van Halen with Sammy Hagar,
mhm,
and they, you remember jukeboxes, and they had like an arcade,
yeah.
and I'm standing there playing Miss Pac-Man or whatever, and Why Can't This Be Love by the new Van Halen is playing on the jukebox, and it was like the first time I had ever heard it, and there was this girl that walked down the stairs into this arcade, this basement arcade, and I was like in love, and I never talked to her ever after that, but her name was Carrie. So Carrie, if you're out there listening,
I'm sure she is. How you doing,
yeah.
Carrie?
But when you're 12, sometimes it's those schoolboy crushes and whatnot that you never forget. So
I just remembered the name too. It was like, who the hell's
Babette,
called? Yeah, who the hell's called
yeah,
that?
no one's right.
So
That's and so Bernie Kosar married your crush from
no, she wasn't. She just, I mean, don't get me wrong, she was good looking, but like, I don't. It's not like
it's
we went there a lot. We went there a few
right,
times to Cuddy's. My dad knew somebody from Youngstown area where actually, I think the sales guy that, or the customer that he worked with,
right.
was like Salem area or West Branch. I think his daughters went to West Branch or whatever. But
Okay,
like we were like all hanging out there with their family and stuff. Just throw up a tent. We didn't have a camper or nothing like that.
right.
I still hate camping to this day. By the way,
I'm not a fan of camping. I
no,
mean, like, why? I don't get it. Like,
no,
if I can sleep in a bed on a
exactly.
mattress, like, I'm all for that. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's fun and more
me.
power to you, but
Yeah, me and my buddy Aaron, when I worked at the last company, we had this conversation in the office that neither of us like camping, and I've said basically camping is like pretend homeless. It's like you got a house, you can stay at your
right,
house. I don't want to go stay at this campground.
right.
I don't want to sleep in a tent. I
I don't
don't.
want to have to
I
walk to go use the bathroom outside in the dark.
Yeah. So every time when I say this, the thing that I see and hear in my head is when Chunk is walking out of the woods in Goonies saying, "I hate nature. I hate nature."
Right, right,
Now, don't get me wrong. I like to go to the park, but small doses nature.
right.
Small doses.
All right, well, let's talk about the music that kind of shaped us during our high school years. Now, I put a post out on Facebook, and I did get some comments from people. I just asked the question, what song reminds you of high school? And Jamie, I want you to be thinking about some of the songs that you find memorable from our high school years. Um, Let me read a few from online. And of course, people could have graduated in different eras, but someone put Red Red Wine. I think that was UB40. So that's probably someone that's
Yeah.
about our age. Um, American Pie and Stairway to Heaven. That's someone probably that graduated in the early 70s. That stupid rap song, To the Window, to the Wall. I think that's like Little John, maybe. So that's a little bit more. That's like in the
It's
2000s.
yeah, it's new age, at least for us, anyways.
Right. REM, It's the End of the World as We Know It. Um,
Now that song I can remember when 107.9, if you were still,
I remember.
yep, you were in this area when
Yep.
they were
Out
killing
of
that
Cleveland.
station.
It was
They
an
were, it,
alternative rock music
yep,
station.
the very last day they played that on loop for 24 hours straight, right?
Right. But as I recall, they didn't say they were going off the air. They just played the song, and then after 24 hours,
Yeah, I can't
they were
remember.
done. Yeah, good memory on that one. Life is a Highway, um, something by the Commodores, and then We Are Family by Sister Sledge. That's like gotta be 70s. Uh oh, do you remember that song by Not a Surf called Popular? That was probably late 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Um, I, I vaguely, and if that's that one
Yeah.
that has it's something about quarterback, I'm popular or
Yeah.
whatever. I didn't
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
that song.
Yeah, it was kind of a whack song. He's kind of like talking through it.
Yeah.
Here's someone we graduated with or in our high school. Poison, Something to Believe in. I remember Poison. The
Oh, that was
power ballad. What was the deal with all these like heavy metal hair bands that they always had to have like one or two power ballad songs so they could get played on the radio? That was the thing you did. So, um, Good Riddance by Green Day, The Time of Your Life, Runaway Train, Bittersweet Symphony.
that was a
Uh,
good song. Yeah, that was. I
do you
like
know?
that
Yeah,
song.
they got sued by the Rolling Stones because they sampled something, but that's the way it goes.
Hmm.
Um, Here's a few more. The Offspring, some Guns N' Roses. I remember someone put Weird Al. I remember the first time I saw the Guns N' Roses "Welcome to the Jungle" video. That was a
Yeah,
pretty big deal.
that was
Like
badass.
nobody knew Guns N' Roses at that point. They were nobodies, and like that song was like what a entrance to the music world. All right, we have a
And
few
then
minutes left.
what was the second one though? They followed that. Was City was the second one that followed that. That was
Or Sweet Child of Mine, maybe one of those
yeah,
two.
yeah, yeah. That's right. So I
The
think it's with
Slash.
those three were all came out back to back to back. It's like wow. And that's why
Right,
Appetite for Destruction is one of the best rock
right.
albums ever.
Somebody referenced on Facebook, "Can't Touch This," MC Hammer. Oh my gosh. It's almost embarrassing to think that we actually listen to that kind of some of these songs.
You know what didn't age well that hit my I hit on my playlist I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Third Base, Brooklyn Queens.
Yeah.
Still love Third Base to an extent,
Pop
but
Goes the Weasel.
yeah, that was on the next album.
Yeah, it was. That
But
was their like pop hit.
yeah,
They were played on the radio. Yeah, those guys seem like posers now when you listen to some of that rap stuff from the. But tell us your song, man. What would you list? Public Enemy,
oh,
right?
the one I put, yeah, Bring the Noise, the remake that Public Enemy did with Anthrax, and
Right.
it was a great collaboration back then was
Right.
what not few and far in
Well,
between of
especially
any
with a heavy
songs.
metal band. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that was a great crossover um, introduction to.
Right.
I would say what probably Aerosmith and Run DMC Walk This Way was probably the
Right.
precursor to that.
Oh, right, for sure. Yeah, that kind of launched rap music into the stratosphere. It made it kind of cool and popular, and they
an
started playing it on the
amazing,
radio.
an amazing
That was a
video on
great
MTV.
music video. And the story goes that Run DMC didn't even know who Aerosmith was, and Aerosmith didn't know who Run DMC were. The first time they met was on the video shoot, probably when Steven Tyler broke through the wall and started singing in the video. All right, well, we're getting near the end of this podcast. We probably will talk more about music in some future podcasts. One of the things we wanted to chat about in the future is maybe some concerts and maybe some artists that really inspired us, particularly some of these artists who have passed away through some sort of tragedy or another, musicians that we probably looked up to. But before we close, let's briefly just touch on something that you and I dabbled with way back when we were like, I don't know, junior high and high school. And that was making our own radio show. We don't need to say what the title of our radio show was, but we would do our own skits and sketches and songs and whatnot. And if I can find the cassette, I'll add a little snippet at the end of this podcast. But what was that like? It took us a long time to finish the whole cassette. We would just dabble with it here and there, as I remember.
Well, do you remember too? You had to have the dual cassette.
Oh, right.
Remember?
Talk about that.
You had
dual
that
cassette player.
So you had to be able to play the music on the one side as we recorded on the other.
Right.
And then you had to build in microphone just like you do in your in some laptops anyways now.
Right.
But yeah, we'd play the music, but then, speak to it, rap to it, sing to it, whatever.
Right.
To create our own commercials. And that a lot of that came from watching Saturday Night Live back then too. Some of those ideas of spoofing and making your own version, or when Weird Al Yankovic did his own spoofs for songs.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I memorized a lot of those Weird Al songs too, by the way. I had those on cassette. Weird Al Yankovic, Dare to Be Stupid. Yeah. There's just something about growing up. And I'll tell you what, it's a little different in this day and age, but there was something about it being tactile where you could open up the cassette tape and you could look at the liner notes, even though it was like a minuscule, the font was really tiny and you could barely read it, but you could hold it in your hands and, you could wear a tape out. I remember, Fritz, when you gave me a copy of Led Zeppelin's like greatest hits. This is probably when we were seniors. And the very first track was Immigrant Song. And that was the first time I had heard Immigrant Song. And it like blew my mind. Playing it in my awesome car stereo in my 82 Chevette, just blasting Led Zeppelin.
Wasn't that thing like strapped down too? It wasn't anything that was mounted in there. I think there was something that kept it from moving right above the shifter.
Right. I just bought like a cassette player from my car from Radio Shack, but I didn't get it mounted in the car properly. So it was just kind of it wasn't quite duct tape.
It wasn't duct tape. I don't know what
my dad like screwed it into the plastic. It was just jerry rigged. I did actually, this will be a story for a future podcast. I did actually nearly crash my Chevette one time blasting Christian heavy metal music on the highway. And I almost got in a bad accident as a result because I was fumbling for the cassette that I dropped onto the ground right near my feet. And I almost got into a bad accident. Those were the days.
I wasn't with you.
You were not. No.
There was a trip that, to talk about being a dork back then.
Yeah.
Remember when we both went to Quonset Hut and got the Weird Al Yankovic, the fat cassette?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
like when
even
the first
worse.
day
It was called.
Came
even
out.
worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Quonset Hut. It always smelled very sweet in that store.
Yep. Even worse. I remember the bad being crossed out now on the cover. Yep.
Right. And by the way, I just saw the other day that Michael Jackson originally wanted Bad to be a duet with Prince. And Prince wouldn't do it solely based upon the lyrics. And so I Googled the lyrics to Michael Jackson Bad. Oh, those lyrics are bad. That song is just bad. Weird Al's version was a lot better, but Even Worse was the title of that one. All right. I think we're wrapping up here.
Yeah. As we wrap up, Tim, I want to definitely thank everybody that's reached out and gave us good feedback. People we went to school with, other just family members, friends, coworkers, and this is a lot of fun. This is something Tim and I have been talking about doing for a long time, and we plan on doing it for a long time. So it takes a little work to get set up, but yeah, absolutely. Keep listening. Keep giving us your ideas on social media. And we appreciate it.
See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. Catch you on the flippity flop.
All right. Next time.
See you next time, guys. Episode 3 coming soon. Very cool. All right. Thanks, Fritz. We can chat on FaceTime really quick. Let me end this.
Yeah, it's
though.
cool.
And